We've got about 8 minutes left in free practice, and we are about to get started here with qualifying in the GT3 GT2 Sunday series. Currently riding along with Saba here in the Lamborghini Huracan. Currently top of the charts in practice. Rivera just behind by about 6/10, and Bush in P3 in the GT2, currently first in class for GT2, but third overall. For those tuned in on Twitch, or for those listening, we do have a YouTube stream up. For the first time, I am dual casting to both Twitch and YouTube. So we'll see how that goes. I have not done it before, but it seems to be working easy enough. For those of you who are keeping up with my broadcasting career as it has been progressing, I commentated my first race in real life this past weekend at my local dirt track. It was an experience for sure, definitely different than doing it on here. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. One being here on the sim, I have all of my information right here in front of my face, but as we see Elizondo off there in the foreground, but at the same time, I have a lot more to keep up with on here on the sim. In terms of getting my information in real life, I actually have live timing that I can pull from. And that is typically the biggest tool in terms of knowing where the battles are. It was a very big weekend in terms of advancing my motorsport broadcasting career. But at the end of all that, you still come back to the people who gave you your start. And here we are back with TRC for the Sunday GT3 GT2 Multi-Class Series. Saba, at least in terms of pace, definitely showing that they will be the car to beat, but down the order from there, the field is pretty tight. The gap in terms of overall timing, from P2 all the way down to P11 is right at 1 second. And having that many cars within a second is quite impressive usually. And I can only imagine in qualifying, as you know, drivers may swap over to a qualifying setup, a little bit more hot lappy, those lap times will improve. And we may see more of a battle in terms of the positions at the front of the field. And we still are a multi-class series, but one thing you'll see with these GT2s and GT3s, the other tracks that we have been to with this series have yielded some interesting results. On a lot of the tracks, it tends to be a little bit hit or miss in terms of which car will be faster or not in terms of class-wise. This track being with as many turns and things like that as it has, I would not be surprised if we do see GT3s showing a little bit better overall race pace than the GT2s, but at the same time, a lot of these new GT2s have a lot of aerodynamic grip to them. You see Craters going for a little wild ride, doing some landscaping there in the foreground. But we may see GT3s hold an advantage ahead of GT2s throughout the majority of the duration of this race. And with this Sunday series, we are doing the 1 hour, 1 stop race format tonight. We're doing a single 15-minute qualifier, not a class split like we have in the Wednesday series. It is just going to be a single qualifying session. The gates are open once the session starts, and it is up to our drivers to set their laps accordingly. And then from there, we will go on and have a rolling start for a 1 hour, 1 mandatory stop race. There is at least 1 tire change, but there is some strategy to be had there. Different cars will have different varying, I would say, degrees of degradation on the tires, such as Rivera in this Porsche here. The rear tires will wear faster than typically the majority of the rest of the field. I would say cars like the Lexus and potentially the GTR would be a little bit different. But something that you will see, and a lot of these drivers in GT2, they may not have driven these GT2s in a stop in a race requiring a stop. So that may be something new in terms of strategy and a new level of handling these GT2s for some of these drivers. So we got 30 seconds left in this free practice session. We are about to get started with qualifying here, and we will see if GT3s will finish ahead of GT2s. Running along with Rivera, we had a car off track just off screen. Not sure who that was. We've got a couple cars setting some flying laps as we come to a close here. There's definitely a lot more GT3s than there are GT2s out here in the field. Harris once again running with that Acura Honda NSX. The lone fighter for Honda here, as Rivera will bring his practice session to a close. Saba still at the top of the timing board. Craters coming in doing a practice pit stop to end his practice session. We've got a couple cars coming around the final corner together. That is Harris in the NSX and Bird in the Maserati MC20 GT2. Bird showing that Maserati has a little bit more speed than that NSX, pulling to the inside. Very, very late, albeit, but he did make it past. And Tremblay, a new name to see as we are watching a practice pit stop. A little bit too hot coming into the pit stop, and that is going to be a teleportation to the pit box. Car number 23 of Young in the Bimmer coming across the line, and qualifying will be starting here. I will get the camera selected. Or I will try my best to get the camera selected. We'll see if it'll let me. Alarcon, also a new name tonight. Let me see if I can get the right camera that I'm looking for here. It does not really seem to be giving me my second replay camera option. So, we will currently ride with Alarcon, looking to be setting the first lap here, not flying lap. It's still technically an out lap, but as long as Alarcon keeps it clean, it will be the first flying lap of the session. Alarcon will bring us out of the final corner here to get on a valid lap and get rolling here with qualifying. We will start seeing the times update down the board as Alarcon, as long as this lap is clean, will be our first time set here in this qualifying session. You can see signified right there in the 001 flashing position board on that screen. Those boards flash both class position and the driver initials. They rotate through that every few blinks, every few seconds. Something to look out for if you're ever watching GT racing for real. Those boards will be different colors, indicating different classes, and they will show the position in class, and sometimes you will also see green lights accompanied with those to indicate your class leaders or your overall leaders. Something that I typically do as Alarcon comes across to set the first flying lap, but it will not be the fastest flying lap, as Busch will set the pace here, at least in GT2, but Anderson will best Alarcon by about 3/4 of a second. Currently Busch the GT2 class leader and Anderson the GT3 class leader here. In qualifying, we have about 11 minutes left. But something I was going to say is I typically try to sound out corner names and things like that, depending on the different tracks that we are at, but I am not Dutch, so I will not be attempting the Netherlands enunciations, as I do not know very much about the Dutch language. So instead of butchering things like a poor or an untrained slaughterhouse worker and it not come out very nice, I will save myself from the butchering. Rivera up into P1 in GT3 with 37.2, going off track just behind Craters here down in the high bank section of turn 4. Rivera. Saba now up into the provisional pole for GT3. Not necessarily surprising, as he was showing some insane pace in the free practice session earlier. We should be looking at a 35 from him in Saba. I don't know why, but the last time that he raced with us for the first time at Hungaroring, he ran with the wiper on the entire time. Not sure why he would continue doing so, but more power to him. And welcome to the YouTube chat as well. I will do my best to check on both. But welcome if you are tuning in on YouTube for the first time. Thank you very much. Saba will be looking to improve. Busch still your GT2 class leader. Coming out of turn 13, the tight hairpin, little chicane hairpin mixed corner, definitely a unique corner, and one that can be very challenging as you're carrying a lot of speed into a heavy braking zone into an awkward right-hander with a weird braking zone. It is very easy to overcook that corner or take a little bit too much curb and force yourself onto the inside of that hairpin section. I would not be surprised if we see an incident there tonight. Not in terms of contact, but just in terms of maybe a driver mistake. This is going to be a 1 hour race, and we will be dealing with some tire wear, not necessarily significant tire wear that you would be getting out of a long stint of tires, unless someone tries to go for an extremely long stint, which I would not necessarily be expecting, but could happen, as we will likely see the 50-50 split in terms of the pit stop procedure, the pit stop strategy. I can only assume that the majority of the drivers will be running somewhere around 50 to 55, potentially 60% race fuel. You may see some drivers attempt the undercut and pit near the 25-minute mark and then have to run 35 minutes on those tires, which is definitely doable. But the 30-minute mark is right around where you start to see an average fall off in the tires. It's car number 44. Looks like we seem to have had an incident. Car number 44 and car number 59. That was Jennings, and who is in the 44 tonight? I want to say I saw a 44, but I am not sure. I do see a 44, and unless I am looking right over it, actually I say the 44 was Saba. Saba, your pole sitter. Having some contact there at the penultimate corner. Turn 14, 15 turns on this course, and something very unique about this course, it has some high bank. The version that we get here on ACC does not have the high banked turns 14 and 15. They are a little bit more flat. They still have some camber to them, but not quite the camber that they would have when you watch the Formula 1 cars come through here, or the GT3 cars whenever they eventually make their arrival to Zandvoort. As we see Merkel with some damage on the rear of that Porsche, bringing it to the pits. Currently everyone setting a lap. We have no one who has had any issues setting a lap yet. Rivera still in P2 by just half a second. We are nearly 2/3 through this qualifying session. Saba still your provisional pole sitter, as he will try his best to improve this lap time as we continue on deeper into this qualifying session. And Busch, still your GT2 leader, with Elizondo with a lot of GT3 traffic seemingly so far between him and the GT3 or GT2 leader. Elizondo, I can only imagine, is going to try and close that gap up, get a few positions further, as only a couple tenths of improvement would bring him up nearly to 6th place overall. Since there is not necessarily a huge pace difference between these GT2s and GT3s, it is going to be a mixed bag start, so we are not going to have a defined class split like you would have in a TCX or GT3 multi-class, or like our Wednesday series, a GT2, GT4 multi-class, where there's definitely a pace and lap time difference where you will have a clear class split down the field. DeHaro in the Hello Kitty car still in the pits along with Ditto. I believe I was going to say Ditto's the lone Aston Martin, but he is not the lone Aston Martin. We have a gold Aston Martin of Hansen here. And it is busy around this course. I can only imagine that as the race progresses and we potentially start to build some backmarker traffic, that traffic will definitely play a role in the battles tonight. Traffic should definitely play a role. Nearly 30 cars on track. Not very many GT2s. If I look at the timetables, I should be able to see how many GT2s we have. We have more than I thought. We have 10 GT2s on track right now, alongside 17 GT3s. And we are about to start seeing some of our penultimate laps here. It will come down to the wire shortly, as the drivers on track, as they all come around, every driver on track has at least one more flying lap. I believe it is going to be just one more flying lap, so if there is going to be any improvement from the drivers, Darnell in the GTR, bit of an odd car to have some strong pace here, but he is up into P3. Will be starting on the second row overall currently, with a couple McLarens behind him. Then the Audi of Craters in GT3, along with Mott, another Aston Martin. Mott with some damage on that car though. Maybe some contact on the sidewall. It seems to just be on the driver's side. Still, not necessarily going to help your qualifying efforts, but I do not believe that it is going to hinder him so far. Wagner in GT2, one of our usual front runners down in the midfield. Would not be surprised if we see him up towards the top of the charts later on in this race. We should be on our final flying laps right now. If the drivers are not at least halfway through a lap, they likely will not get another flying lap, and this will be the end. We are about to start seeing some of our positions be set in stone as Saba runs a 35.3, securing his pole in GT3 so far, as Wagner is bouncing all over the place, getting that GT2 Maserati completely airborne. And that will bring an end to his qualifying session. Saba coming through turns 12 and 13 now with a GT2 992 GT2 Club Sport RS following just behind him. Saba, with 1 second left on the clock, will be able to start his final flying lap, and anyone who comes across the line now will be finishing their qualifying session. Car number 727 of Kelta, a newcomer in that highlighter green Aston Martin. Going to improve one position so far. Drain just behind, I believe not improving. Car number 88 of Tremblay also not improving. Car number 51 of Davis coming across the line looking to improve, will improve up into P5. Car number 7 of Harrell, one of our consistent front runners, coming out of the final corner looking to improve here and hopefully close some ground or leapfrog ahead of his GT2 compatriots who are just above him on the timing, but it will not happen on this lap. Two more cars on track. Anderson in the 720S McLaren ahead of Saba, your current pole sitter, and I believe will be your pole sitter here tonight for this Sunday Zandvoort 1 hour race. As Anderson coming out of the final corner looking to improve here. He seems to like the lap as he is still on it. He has not abandoned it yet. We will see if he will improve here. Currently P4 overall. Will move up one position. He will not move up in class, but he will move up in the order. Not changing the rows, but going from the outside to the inside. And that will bring a close to the session here. In qualifying, it was very busy out on track, but the drivers seem to have negotiated things nicely. Bush, your GT2 pole sitter in the Maserati, ahead of Drain in an Audi, the Audi R8 LMS GT2, and then another Maserati in P3. Then Harrell P4, DeHaro P5, Wagner P6, Bird P7, Mikey P8, Jennings P9, and Breakfast P10 in GT2. In GT3, Saba once again locking down the pole. It is a clean sweep of all the sectors, setting the fastest lap of a 35.3, nearly a second ahead of the second place Rivera in the Porsche, and then Anderson in P3 in that McLaren 720S. Davis P4, Darnell P5, Craters P6, Mott P7, Slokey P8, Alarcon P9, Kelta P10. The newcomers will be starting close to each other. And then Eggy P11, Merkel P12, Tremblay, another newcomer in P13, Young P14, Harris P15, Hansen P16. I believe Hansen is new, at least in this series, and we have a couple more drivers. Ditto P17 and Bomb in 3. I believe they either have joined late or have not set a lap, meaning they dropped out of the session. That is your qualifying order, but how do they stack up on the grid? It is a GT3 lockout of the front three positions. Saba Rivera on the front row with Anderson and Bush, the first of the multi-class rows here. Then Davis and Darnell in P3, a GT3 row. Craters and Mott, another GT3 row. And then Drain, the next GT2 on the board, as it looks like we are about to be rolling here very shortly. It is a mixed bag all the way down through the field. There are more GT3s than there are GT2s, but we will see how they stack up in terms of pace as we go down the field here. As we get started, we are about to go with a formation lap here. Saba will be leading us off the line as we are going to do a full formation lap. And we will be started here very shortly.
Seconds.
And we will go on board with Saba here. He's got that Lamborghini fired up, still with the wiper on. Not 100% sure of that, but we will look back towards the field as he leads us off the line here in about 10 seconds. Cars as far back as the eye can see. And here at Zandvoort, we were about to kick the action off tonight unlike our other series, it is just going to be one 1 hour race here. We do have a pit stop. It is at the driver's discretion of when that pit stop is taken. And we will ride along with Saba as he brings us off the line. And we are looking backwards at the rest of the field following suit. Saba, not much dragging of the brakes, not much weaving, at least not yet. If you are unfamiliar with GT cars or racing in general, something that you will see on these formation laps is a lot of the dragging of the brakes and weaving. What they are trying to do is generate brake temperature and tire pressure and temperature. As the tires get hotter, they will be increasing in temperature, which, just like a hot air balloon, when you increase in temperature, you increase in pressure. As you see Saba here riding those brakes, bringing the RPMs up, and just holding onto those brakes to bring some temperature into them. The biggest thing for brakes at the start is as you drive around here, those brakes are going to be cooled. You have air coming in through the brake ducts, cooling those brakes down. And unless you are using those brakes a little bit, trying to keep their temperature up, they will act very, very cold like a fresh brake pad as you come down to the start of the race at turn 1. You do not want to have cold brakes as you come down to turn 1, as you are going to be used to warm brakes in terms of where your braking points would be. If you do not have warm brakes and try to slam the brakes at your desired braking point, you will go right past it and usually off into the gravel. Not where you want to be at the start of the race. So I will see if maybe I can get us a different point of view here. Believe we will try this camera here, and I think I like that much nicer. Coming into turns 12 and 13, the seemingly awkward chicane hairpin thing as race control gives the 2x2 call. We are now lined up 2x2. Eggy and the Mercedes jumping off nearly into the grass there on the right hand side. As we come across the slightly smaller Banky Boy, we do not have this version of the track with the big Banky Boy, but we do have the smaller Banky Boy. Saba and Rivera, Lamborghini and Porsche, will be coming to the line side by side to kick off this race in the Sunday GT3 GT2 Multi-Class Series. As they come to the line, Saba will be setting the pace as we are about to take the green flag for this race tonight. You see some of those drivers giving some flashes, ready to go, and we are green flag for the first time tonight, the only time tonight, as we run down to turn 1. Saba on the inside of Rivera. These drivers holding station. We're 3 wide, nearly 4 wide, back through the field, but Saba will pull away nicely to the inside. Looking back at the map and looking at the cars come around turn 1, I believe we have made it through nicely. Anderson looking to force an early position on Rivera as Rivera goes deep into turn 4. The high bank acute angle turn, nearly a hairpin, not quite. As we come up the hill and then down the hill for turn, I believe turn 6 here. If not turn 6, it would be turn 7. It is actually turn 8, but it is a very treacherous off-camber, downhill, high-speed corner that is very, very easy to carry too much speed in. Saba getting a little bit of that curb on the inside of turn 10, but holding on to the lead still. Rivera trying to just hold on to his slipstream as he will need it as they come down the pit straight. Saba showing that pace early, looking to pull a gap on Rivera here. At the back of the field, we've got a little bit of a cluster of cars here. Ditto bringing up the rear. Slokey starting in the pit lane, but I believe he may have disconnected from us here. And Jennings also bringing up the rear here. The leading two seem to have broken off from the rest of the field as they come down to turn one. Rivera is still there close behind Saba. Not quite close enough for a move, and just trying to hold on to that Lamborghini that I believe will just continually get smaller and smaller. He has shown unbeatable pace in both this race and the previous race that we ran in this series. Car number 91 of Alarcon, one of the newcomers, contact with Eggy. Eggy in the Team Lime car, as Jennings also makes contact with Eggy. Alarcon, the newcomer, with some early damage and some unfortunate contact there with Eggy and some collateral contact with Jennings there. Hopping back on with your overall and GT3 leaders, Saba and Rivera. And they have broken away nicely. You can still see the third place Anderson and the GT2 leader of Busch close behind. Busch potentially looking to get past Anderson. He does not have any GT2 traffic to play with just yet, or I say GT2 traffic, any GT2 competitors to play with just yet. Anderson bailing out of turn 13, going to the inside, and that is only going to drop him positions as he moves down a couple positions. Davis and Darnell, the other McLaren 720S and the GTR of Darnell, moving through. Saba just pulling away slightly from Rivera. Rivera definitely out of the slipstream range at this point. He's just going to have to hold station, potentially be looking at some pit strategy, getting that position. Busch up into P3 overall, your GT2 leader. As you can see, Drain in that Audi GT2 just honking and haunting in the background. Just waiting to move past these GT3s. It will take a little bit for these GT2 cars to warm up in terms of the tires. So we'll hop on with Craters leading a gaggle of cars here. He's got two GT2s behind him. The Maserati MC20 GT2 of Elizondo, actually both drivers in the Maserati MC20 GT2. And then Mott in the Aston Martin GT3 following behind. Car number 914 of Eggy has parked it for now. I believe he is going to be getting some repairs to the bodywork after that contact with Alarcon. In GT2 here, this is a battle for position between Wagner and Elizondo. Elizondo down into the hard braking point of turn 12. Looked like he may have been going for the move, but just going to slop behind as he nearly makes contact with the rear bumper of Wagner. And the move for this position may be on at the end of the pit straight here before the braking zone down into turn 1. As long as Elizondo can hold on to that slipstream and hold on to the gap, he seems to be running just a touch wide. Getting those tires off into the grass is not going to help very much. Elizondo looking for the move down into turn 1, nearly alongside, but thinking better of it, backing out of the move, and will slot behind once more. Just waiting for the right time to strike and get this overtake done. Car number 81. Who is in the 81 there? That is Breakfast. Breakfast off track there at turn 13. As you can hear, the Porsches all the way across the track. Saba still your leader in GT3 and your overall leader. Rivera following close behind. You can see him in the background of these shots of Saba's Lamborghini, but Rivera dropping back from Saba ever so slightly, holding the gap for the past lap, but just not being able to hold the pace just yet. Davis potentially under attack from Darnell. Anderson lurking just behind the GT3 that out-qualified both of these drivers, but dropping back early on. Darnell looking to get a better exit of turn 13 than Davis. Davis going slightly defensive to the inside of turn 14. Darnell just trying to slop behind. He has the top speed in that GTR, but he does not have quite the aerodynamic capability, the aerodynamic handling of these other cars, as Davis going slightly defensive, holding the middle of the track, seeing that Darnell is not close enough, slotting back to the outside racing line, as Darnell and Davis continuing on in this battle. Drain and Harrell GT2s side by side, potentially going to be in a battle here shortly. Elizondo still trying to find a way around Wagner. Wagner trying to find the inside of Craters here. Craters, just a moving roadblock, and I can only imagine these GT2s of Wagner and Elizondo are getting ever more impatient as this race goes on. Elizondo all over the curbs, nearly 4 tires in the air. I think he may have been completely airborne, just getting a little bit too much of that curb on the run down through 7, turns 6 and 7, and just bouncing off all over the place, off into the grass. Once again getting on those curves, and I believe he's nearly going to concede the position to Mott there in the Aston Martin. Saba just continuously pulling away from Rivera. Rivera now potentially under attack from Busch here in the coming laps, and Darnell past Davis, as well as Drain past Harrell. Harrell making a mistake at turn 13, and that is going to give Drain the position here. Drain now up into P2. Both of these drivers still on the podium, but that could be under attack shortly, as Wagner has now broken free from Elizondo, trying to get past Craters. We are a few laps into this race, and I believe these GT2s have now come alive. They are starting to show some pace and work their way up the field, exercising their advantage of horsepower. They do have more horsepower than these GT3s. They just do not have as much aerodynamic technology that the GT3s have. So it's a bit wishy-washy in terms of what tracks in this series the GT3s are going to be on top or the GT2s are going to be on top. Here at a technical track like this that does have some high-speed straight sections, it tends to be just more so on the driver to put that car in the position that it needs to be. At Red Bull Ring, another car that is technical but has a lot of straightaway sections, the times were give or take. The GT3s would carry a lot more speed through the corners, as they would lose speed, lose time down the straights to the GT2s, but the GT2s would just not be as good through the corners as the GT3s. Now, tracks like Paul Ricard, where there is an extremely long back straight and a slightly long front straight, the GT2s should, in theory, run away with that. They don't have too much of a technical handling section to deal with. As Darnell, the GT3, trying to break away from this field here and move forward, definitely showing some pace. As Darnell going for the early pit stop. I wonder if this is maybe a mistake that needs to be fixed, or this is early strategy. But Darnell potentially thinking that he can hold on to tires for over 40 minutes, nearly 50 minutes, as Darnell is going to be our first taker in a voluntary pit stop, breaking off from the field, going for the pit stop early. We will see if Darnell is onto something here with this pit strategy. Much earlier than I believe anyone was expecting for a pit stop, but Darnell thinks he's got something up his sleeve. Either that or he forgot to put gas in it, which very heavily can influence your pit strategy. Rivera still following behind. The gap, I believe, up to nearly 4 or 5 seconds. They're actually nearly 6 seconds. Craters still ahead of Wagner. Wagner not finding a way past Craters yet. Craters seeming to make that Audi very wide. And then Anderson now nearly falling victim to the charging GT2s of Drain and Harrell. Looks like the GT2s are starting to warm up and move past a lot of the GT3 field. We're seeing some of those GT2s creep up the order. But we will be checking on Darnell with the very, very early strategy call, I believe. I could be completely wrong, and it was something that needed to be urgently assessed on the car. But if it is a very early strategy call, we will see if it comes to fruition later on. Car number 1, 2, 3 of Hansen stopped at the exit of turn 13 for a short amount of time. A little bit of damage on that car, but just continuing on. Coming out of turn 14 here. Actually, turn 15. Then coming across the line. In that Aston Martin, I got to see one of these this past weekend at Circuit of the Americas at the GT World Challenge event. Saba, now, I believe he's made a mistake. He's got some damage on the front of that car. It could have potentially been some contact with traffic, but now the gap has dropped significantly between Saba and Rivera. I can only imagine that Saba is going to get that damage fixed during the pit stop. But Rivera now getting a second wind here. This incident with Saba may grant him a little bit of his pace back. That being Rivera trying to move up on Saba, trying to close that gap. Busch just a couple corners behind the leading duo here of Saba and Rivera. Busch still your GT2 leader. Drain and Harrell once again locked in battle. And now this battle is allowing Craters in the Audi GT3 to move up into the conversation here. And with him comes Wagner. Wagner and Elizondo now closing that gap up once more. We could potentially be having a four-way battle for position in GT2 here, and all of these battles would be, or this battle would be for both of the positions on the podium, aside from the top spot, which is held by Busch so far. Rivera still following behind Saba. The gap now up to 2 seconds though, where it was 1.6 a lap ago. And Drain still under attack from Harrell. Once again, the more that these drivers battle, the closer that this group is going to bunch up. We got two Audis with a Audi GT3 cousin between their enemies in the Maserati GT2s. But looking like this could shape up to something quite entertaining here shortly. And in terms of those pit stops, we are about 15 minutes away from our scheduled pit stops. I say scheduled, that's just the halfway mark, but I can only assume that the majority of the drivers are going to take their pit stops at the halfway mark. Harrell pulling to the inside, maybe having to look for the move, not having the space or the pace to get that move done, flashing the light saying, hey, I am trying to get past you, as Harrell is all over the bumper of Drain here. Opting for the outside, going for a little bit of a short track maneuver here, as we are on the high banks for a very short amount of time, making me think that we are out at a super speedway. Drain and Harrell coming down through turn 8 before the flying kink of 9. Just grab a touch of that curb on the inside and float to the outside before the hard braking, awkward right-hander of turn 10. And then yet another awkward, seemingly endless left-hander of turn 11 before you run down the short little straight section here. It's nearly straight, it's just flat out. Harrell once again flashing those lights, trying to force maybe a late braking from Drain, as we have had a car up ahead. Car number 710. Davis and Anderson, one of those drivers went off into the sand for a second, as this is now surmounting up to be a GT3 battle for the podium positions in GT3. We're going to have some battles here coming very shortly. Drain and Harrell with Wagner and Elizondo both in battle behind. Wagner now finally, after many laps, nearly getting that move done. It's not going to happen there. Going too deep at the exit, and now instead of taking one position, he's going to concede two. Wagner was up ahead of Craters and had a little bit of a cushion, or was going to have a cushion of Craters from Elizondo, but now Wagner is now the one on the back foot trying to move forward. He is now stuck behind Mott. This is the worst thing that Wagner could have gotten out of that turn one interchange. And now he is going to have to fight this position back. He had the job done, but it was just a little bit too little too late in terms of the brakes. And he overshot it into the sand as Anderson, one of the fighting GT3s, looking at a podium position around. I'm guessing there must have been some contact with Davis. I don't see very much damage on the front of that car. I don't know if maybe he spun it or got too much of the curb, or if they came together. But Anderson now dropping down the order, dropping very far down the order as he did his due diligence. He did his due diligence and held his line, held the brakes. Sorry, I have gotten spam messages for the first time in chat. We've made it big time now. Anderson now taking this opportunity to go ahead and dive into the pit lane, hoping to get an undercut here. That unfortunate spin has changed into a strategy call for him. Saba still your leader. The gap to Rivera, nearly 4.5 seconds. Busch now in the lead of the GT2 still. Drain still ahead of Harrell. Davis now on his lonesome for the final spot on the GT3 podium, trying to run away. He does not have any drivers to deal with here. He doesn't have anyone to battle, so he should be on his own. He's got some clean air in front of him. He is just going to be running some time trials here, as the GT2s seem to be trying to give him some company here very shortly. Harrell getting past the lap GT2 of Breakfast, putting a car between him and his competitor of Drain. Drain also trying to get past Breakfast. It will not happen yet. We've got a gaggle of cars here. Breakfast getting shown the blue flag. Elizondo now ahead of Drain. Elizondo has wedged himself in between the battling GT2s of Drain and Harrell, and now we have 3 GT2s all together here. As Harrell ahead of Elizondo, ahead of Drain. Wagner, he's got he's got 2 GT3s between him and his GT2 competitors. He is still trying to get past the neon green GT3 Aston Martin of Kelta. And if he can get past that GT3 of Kelta, he will be moving forward onto the GT3 of Mott. But Wagner now also under attack from the Hello Kitty Audi GT2 of Daharo here. And just trying to hold his position. Wagner with some hard luck today, but skill can only get you so far in racing. You do need to have some luck with it. Busch now lurking behind Anderson. Anderson, the car that was battling for the GT3 podium, getting involved in some contact, getting spun around, and having to just hold the brakes, hold his line, and drop down the grid, turning that into a strategy call and going and grabbing his pit stop early. Bird getting a drive-through for speeding in pit lane as he was going to complete his pit stop. We have started some early takers in the pit stops here. Eggy, I believe, ended up parking it, but Wagner also hopping down into the pit lane to get his stop out of the way. As we are starting to see our early takers here, these drivers are much closer to the suggested pace, or I say suggested pace, to the suggested pit strategy. Bird, unfortunate for him, an early taker in GT2 to try and get some positions made up, getting a drive-through penalty and having to serve that sometime within the next 3 laps. Saba now looking to lap the Audi GT3 of Craters, who pit shortly ago. Rivera still following close behind. None of your leaders have pit yet. No leaders have pit yet, so we will start to see, hopefully, the fruits of their labor of those early drivers who took their stops earlier on. Darnell, I said we would check up on him. He is up into P15 overall. Checking the timetables, that would put him up into 9th so far. Not bad overall, but he still has some more GT3s in front of him. Quite a few GT3s. Actually, every GT3 that's in front of him has not pit yet. He is the only, or I guess he is the GT3 that is the furthest ahead. As we have some more takers. Car number 103, that was Bird not taking. He was serving his penalty there. And in very good fashion, not getting another one as he served it. Saba going past the Aston Martin of Ditto. Rivera, you can see him just behind. I believe that traffic may have caused him a little bit of a time deficit, as Rivera is now only 2.3 seconds behind Saba. Rivera trying to get past Craters. Definitely showing some pace still in that Porsche. He has not reached the tire fall-off zone yet, as Rivera will go around Craters, going to the inside at turn 1, showing that he doesn't need new tires to move forward in this field. Rivera showing some strong pace, but not quite as strong as Saba. But Rivera is running an extremely clean race. I don't see any damage in that car at all. The race could come to Rivera later on tonight. Saba still your leader, and Busch still your leader in GT2. Now a little bit of a gap between your leading cars here. Harrell broken away from Elizondo. Elizondo just behind Drain. Drain has fallen back, now behind DeHaro. Do not know what happened to Drain, maybe just gone a little bit off track, as it is very easy to lose positions if you get caught up in the sand trap here. As Saba nearly coming up behind Darnell shortly. Darnell with a little bit of damage on the back of that Nissan, clattering over the curves coming out of turn 15. Saba still your leader. The question comes, or the question is, when does your leader pit? We know that these tires can last a lot longer than some of these drivers think, as Ditto, I think Ditto may have been, I thought Ditto may have been looking for a move on Craters there, but Craters making a move on Ditto. As Anderson is also looking to move past Ditto here. Ditto still not having taken a pit stop. As we are now in the meat of the field here. Craters ahead of Anderson with ditto in between. Crater's trying to run away from Anderson. Anderson trying to make up whatever positions in this race that he can. Davis just getting past the Porsche of Merkel. And car number 91. Oh, where is the 91? 91 of Alarcon in the McLaren 720S, opting to take his pit stop. A little bit of damage on that car, but still showing some solid pace as he is now going to take his pit stop for tires and fuel. We will see if we have any more takers here coming shortly. Sava with Wagner and Hansen just up ahead. Mott and Kelta, both Aston Martin drivers. They have been running together for quite some time, but neither driver having overtaken the other in a while. Daharo with Drain just behind. Daharo up into P4 in GT2, still not having taken a pit stop. And when these pit stops cycle through, as Jennings also coming into the pit lane to take his stop, as Alarcon is exiting. We'll see if we get some more takers here shortly. Saba trying to get past the lap traffic of Hansen. Rivera loving every bit of it. The more that Saba has to deal with some traffic, the closer and closer Rivera will be able to get. Once again, Rivera just driving an extremely clean race, which is usually what he does. He is very, very tidy and precise on his races, just holding his pace, letting the race come to him. And as it stands right now, the traffic showing to be a little bit of an issue for Saba that may allow Rivera to close that ground that he desperately needs. Busch with Davis. I'd say that was Davis. I think Busch may have just been, that was Anderson. Anderson a lap GT3, as I believe we may have some more takers here. Jennings getting a drive-through penalty coming out of pit lane. Extremely unfortunate for him. Harris in the Honda Acura NSX, driver that we have not been seeing too much tonight as your leaders have come in. Saba coming in ahead of Rivera. Saba with damage on the front of that car could be extremely crucial for the timing of this pit stop here, as Rivera will slot just ahead of Saba. Now, the one thing here, Rivera does not seem to have damage. Saba does. And another thing that is extremely crucial is both of these drivers they need to have come into the pits at the correct speed. A penalty for either one of these drivers could potentially take them out of contention for the win. But what I am trying to see is, does Rivera get out earlier? He stopped later. Rivera does not get out earlier, but he will be just behind. I was thinking with Saba. Saba opted not to repair the damage to hold on to the position. I guess Saba realized that the damage at the front of the car was not worth repairing, as he did not choose that repair bodywork option, as Ditto now coming into the pit lane as well. Drain and Tremblay now in the pits, as we have who else coming into the pit lane? The 16 of Mikey. Mikey, another driver that we have not been keeping up very much with tonight. Mikey down into the pits, as we have a lot of takers here right at the 30-minute mark. Pit stops galore. Come and take them. Tires and fuel. As Drain, the first to come in, will be the first to leave. He just needs to make sure that he exits nicely, as we should start to see some of the rest of the field. Busch coming into the pit lane now. Jennings coming to serve that speeding penalty for exiting pit lane. Busch, your GT2 leader, coming to serve his stop. Saba still... Actually, Saba should come out your leader, but that strategy call that Darnell took with the extremely risky early pit stop, it has shown to be giving him a podium, but once more, how will his tires be at the end of this race? I can only imagine that he is going to be fighting for grip. Mott and Kelta coming into the pit lane. Busch should be exiting very shortly. The battling sister Aston Martin GT3s of Kelta and Mott coming into the pit lane together. There are very few cars that have not taken a stop. Harrell now up into the GT2 lead, but it does not mean much as he has not taken his pit stop yet, but he could try and hold out. Davis, currently your GT3 leader, but he will not be whenever he takes his pit stop with some damage on that car. Elizondo up into P2, once again not having taken his pit stop. DeHaro as well. The last GT2. Salty Breakfast has not taken his pit stop yet. But Harrell, Elizondo, Davis, DeHaro, and Breakfast, your remaining drivers not having taken their tires and fuel. It is mandatory. You can't not do it. But will they try and hang it out late and go for the late stop, or will they try and pit this lap? We will see if we have any takers as they come across the line. Harrell still holding on to it. Elizondo diving to the pit lane and will be followed by Davis. Elizondo and Davis getting their pit stops out of the way. That would leave Busch coming around turn 13. I do not think that these drivers are going to have enough time to come out of the pit lane ahead of Busch. Wagner would be the next GT2. Wagner taking his stop early. Wagner currently in P5 in GT2. Harrell still not having taken a stop. Elizondo taking a stop. Davis taking a stop. But the call from Wagner to come into the pits early is looking like it might come to fruition here, as he is coming down the pit straight. Elizondo, it's dropped off the jacks, but it is not started yet. There he goes. He has started, but he will come out behind Wagner. Wagner getting the undercut there with that early strategy call to come into the pits. Busch with Elizondo following close behind. Elizondo could potentially be looking for a battle for the lead here if he can close this gap up. There is quite a gap between Elizondo and Busch as Darnell gets updated on the timing boards. Darnell now up into P3 in GT3. We will see if he can hold on to it, as all of the drivers, Breakfast now taking his pit stop, and Breakfast is going to be the last one. I say the last one. Harrell diving into the pit lane, followed by DeHaro. They will be the last drivers to take their stop. Harrell and DeHaro taking their mandatory tires and fuel, and that will bring a close to pit stops here, as we will now be going to the end. Young in the BMW contact with, I believe, Harris in the NSX. Maybe not. Maybe just lost it on his own. I don't see any damage on the front of that, but that BMW seems to be all sorts of torn up. We will see if Young can continue on with the pace. I think that may have just been an individual incident. He's got a little bit of damage on it. Could also be the livery kind of throwing me off, looking like he's got more damage than it shows. DeHaro now coming out of the pit lane. DeHaro currently in P5. Overall P3 in GT2. Saba ahead of Harris with Rivera just behind. Saba still with the damage on the front of that car. Once again making the strategy call to not repair the bodywork, as that would prolong the stop by about 10-15 seconds. Not something that you could afford with your battling rival in second just behind you. Saba extremely smart. I say extremely smart in not repairing that damage and holding on to the holding on to the position there by not repairing the damage, not taking that extra time. And it does not necessarily seem to be hindering his pace, so it's probably the one reason why he didn't repair it. Busch back to the GT2 lead with Harrell in P2, Wagner in P3. Wagner potentially looking for a move here shortly, I would think, if he can close this gap up. And Elizondo now trying to close the gap up to Wagner. It's just GT2s as far as the eye can see. Darnell in the GT3, the P3 GT3, continuing onward, as he is the one who took that very, very early strategy call and tried to get a extreme undercut on the rest of the field. And as of right now, it seems to be paying off. Darnell, with 20 minutes left of the race, nearly 2/3 of the way through, sitting in P3, but will his tires hold on to the end? Darnell, P2 in GT2 with Wagner, P3 in GT2, lurking just behind. Anderson, with that spin earlier on, looking to make up some positions nicely. I believe he is in P6 in GT3, which is definitely a good comeback after dropping all the way down the order. I say all the way down the order. He dropped quite a few places, not all the way, but from battling for P3 down to P10 onwards. Rivera getting a touch of the grass there. Car number 67 of Harris, I believe, getting some damage, and Harris may be parking it. An incident there at the turn 4 banking involving Harris and I believe another car. Saba with a bobble of the front on that Lamborghini. Very unusual. Maybe having a little bit of discomfort with the front of that car. Maybe coming to a little bit of a disagreement. Car number 23 of Young stopped on the banking, facing the wrong way, as I believe he may have some damage, opting to just go to the pits. Drain with damage on that GT2. Extremely unfortunate for Drain. Was running very nicely in GT2, but I believe he may have had some contact either with Young or with Harris, as we will see if they get rolling once more, but they will be dropping the laps to repair that damage. Saba, still your leader. Car number 3 of Drain. Drain moving back out onto the field, as he will try and reclaim what positions he can. Tremblay in the 88 with a little bit of damage, following just behind the other newcomer of Alarcon. Two newcomers in battle here. Alarcon, I believe, also not opting to repair the damage on that McLaren 720S. And Craters with actually quite a bit of damage on that car. I believe I may have missed a very large incident earlier on, as we have a lot of torn up race cars here, as Jack Craters with tons of damage on the nose of that Audi. Rear wing a little off kilter as he is going to allow the field through, and I can only imagine that Craters is going to be coming to the pit lane here very shortly. Saba now navigating his way through the traffic. He's got Mikey in the GT2 up ahead, and then Merkel in the Porsche ahead as well. Rivera trying to snake his way along. Car number 9 of Ditto off track, maybe just running a little bit wide. I don't see much damage to that car. Maybe just running a little wide. Rivera now making his way past Craters. Craters, I believe, just continuing on with that damage on that car, but looks like he had a severe front impact, but it seems to not be affecting the car too much. As Busch now going around Drain diving out of the way, allowing Busch to go past. Busch, your GT2 leader. Harrell coming out of turn 15 as Busch is now coming out of turn 3 down into turn 4. Quite a large gap between them, but still nice for Harrell. As Harrell is actually going off track, going too late on the brakes. That is not something that you want to do, as Wagner and Elizondo, both GT2s hungry for a podium here, are chomping at the bit to get everything they can out of their cars and close up this gap to Harrell. Busch has nearly run away with the lead as long as he can keep it clean to the end, but Harrell potentially under attack from Wagner and Elizondo. Darnell holding nicely in P3 here in GT3 with that very early strategy call. Once again, just waiting for his tires to show us what they are going to do. He's either had to nurse them all the way around, or they will be very, very much dying of death at the end of this race. I do not believe that Rowan is racing tonight, sadly, but as always, we will try to find the drivers that you shout out in chat, albeit may be to their detriment, as the majority of the time that we hop onto drivers that are requested. Car number 913 of Craters around at turn 4, facing the wrong way, waiting for the right time to get that car turned back around. Damage all over that car still, as he has found a gap and is getting that car turned back around, continuing on with the race. As Busch, the GT2 leader, going by just there in the foreground. Your leader now coming up to the traffic of Alarcon and Tremblay and Hansen. Hansen being a lap car, but Alarcon and Tremblay also in battle here. Alarcon getting a lot of the curb, and Alarcon is around, keeping the tires spun, getting I believe just dipping the clutch in, keeping the rear tires spun around, as he will just loop that car back around and continue on with his race. No big deal to me. A little bit of 360 for the style points, and he is back on track. Saba now with Tremblay and Hansen, tucking just behind Tremblay. Tremblay is trying to get past the lap car of Hansen, and Saba is looking to follow through, but I believe both of those drivers ahead making some contact. Tremblay backing out of that move, allowing Hansen to hold on to it for a couple more corners. But your leader of Saba trying desperately to get past here, as Tremblay all over the inside curve, I think trying to get out of the way of the leader. But this traffic has only closed the gap up for Rivera, as Rivera is very much closer than he has ever been in this race, as Rivera now also trying to get past Tremblay. Rivera diving very bravely down into the downhill braking zone of turn 8, getting past Tremblay, and now just behind Saba, barely over a second between them. Once again, one mistake from either driver, and that could lock the move in one way or another. Hansen going off track there in the foreground of this leading battle. And we've got a gaggle of cars here all around Darnell. Darnell looking to move past the lap car of Ditto. Harrell up ahead. Wagner trying to get past. There's all sorts of traffic moving through here, and this has closed this gap up between Wagner and Elizondo. Wagner looking to go around the outside of Breakfast downhill into turn 8. Elizondo following suit, but Elizondo is behind Breakfast, and he is flashing the light saying, "Hey, I'm coming through." Breakfast diving out of the way, allowing Elizondo to come through as they go side by side through the kink of 10, or the kink of 9, down into the hairpin of 10. As Elizondo is now clear between him and Wagner. Both of these drivers looking to move past Darnell, but Harrell is in their sights. Harrell is the car they are looking for, as they are trying to get a shot at a podium position here. Wagner currently the final spot on the podium. They want to move up the podium. Elizondo trying to get onto the podium. The battle here shaping nicely for the conclusion of this race. We are just 13 minutes away from the checkered flag, as Kelta finally looking for a move past Mott. It will not happen there on the exit of 15, but Kelta tucking into the slipstream, potentially looking for the move. He's got to get past Ditto. He is past Ditto, just holding station, following behind as we've got 3 Aston Martins all together here. The Aston Martin factory loving every bit of it, getting their 3 cars on screen there. Rivera now still holding station close behind Saba. He is not quite in the slipstream range, but these two have been going at it the entire race. Rivera just trying to hold on to the tail of Saba here, not letting him run away too much. And we'll see as the gap updates as they come across the line. It's just grown by a 1/10, but Rivera still there. One mistake and this race either falls completely away from Rivera or all in his favor. Car number 710 of Anderson around once more on the exit of turn 9, and I believe we have lost Anderson at that point. Breakfast and Ditto lapping with each other here, but once again the battle for position here in GT3 between Kelta and Mott. Kelta was nearly looking for the move on the inside of Mott. Did not happen. Just tucking behind and following through, looking for this move later on. Craters with that severely damaged GT3. But Harrell, I say Harrell, it was Elizondo and Wagner. As Elizondo now past Wagner, we saw that move coming together in the background when we were on board with Kelta and Mott. But Elizondo is past Wagner. Elizondo up into the podium positions, now trying to hunt down Harrell, who is doing his best to run away. It will be Maserati versus Audi as Harrell gets all over the curb, somehow keeping that car under control as he comes down the hill of turn 8 through the kink of 9. Harrell just once again trying to hold on to it. Almost had a big moment there on the entry of 8, but holding on to it nicely. Saba now with Rivera inside slipstream range. This battle shaping up nicely as Saba has led nearly every lap in this race, with Rivera playing second fiddle, just following close behind. Will this come to a battle for the lead, or will Saba just continue his reign through this race? Rivera needs to hold this gap all the way through till they get back on the front straightaway, as that will be the best time to use the slipstream that Rivera will be getting. You see the biggest benefit of the slipstream sometime around the 3/4 of a second mark, but Rivera still very close to Saba, but closer than he has ever been, as I don't know if maybe Saba is dropping off the pace or driving a little bit more conservatively, but Rivera all over the rear bumper of Saba here. We could potentially be looking for a move for the lead shortly, as Rivera once again just driving an extremely perfect race. No mistakes from him. It has been aces all the way through. We will see if Rivera can put a move for the lead here before we come to the end of the race. We are inside 10 minutes before the checkered flag. Car number 103 of Bird going slightly wide. We just heard him off in the gravel. Saba opening the gap to Rivera by just a 1/10 by the time they get to the end of the front straightaway and get down into turn 1. Once again, Rivera just trying to hold on to this position. Busch still your GT2 leader, with Harrell in P2 and Elizondo in P3. Elizondo inching ever so much closer to Harrell with Wagner in tow. GT2 looking to have a battle for the podium positions here very shortly. Darnell now under attack from Mott and Kelta, the battling Aston Martins, as Kelta will go around Mott at the entry of 12 and 13. But Darnell now, with that early stop, I believe he has nothing for tires left on that car as he is just walking it around the track. I can only imagine as we see him going a little bit loose out on the exit of 14 on the entry of 15. Darnell pitting extremely early in that car, pitting right at the 50-minute mark. He is on extremely old tires as Kelta now dropping back behind Mott, conceding that position once more. Darnell is going to have to make that GTR much wider than it already is. He is going to have to take up the entire breadth of the track to keep his car on the podium and try and hold on to this third place position here, as Mott and Kelta are both hungry for a podium here. Neither driver has a podium in this series. Kelta, the newcomer, looking for his first podium and his first finish in this series. It would be an extremely good race for Kelta here. Harrell now moving past the lap car of Bird. Busch still your leader. Elizondo, as we saw him just in the background of Harrell here. Elizondo closing that gap up ever so slightly. I don't know if he will have enough time. Elizondo can see his target out of that windshield. As we will hop back on with the battle of Darnell, Mott, and Kelta, a three-way battle for the final spot on the podium here in GT3. Darnell on extremely old tires, driving on those tires for nearly an hour, trying to find whatever grip he can. Kelta and Mott both battling for position, neither driver helping each other out to move past Darnell here, as Darnell comes out of 15. Kelta still tucked behind Mott. Kelta not close enough for a move, may potentially look to the inside. Mott goes defensive, forcing Kelta to try it around the outside if he will try it. Kelta will not try it, and once again, as these drivers have been the entire race, Kelta just slotting behind Mott once more. I can only imagine that Kelta is getting more and more antsy to get this move done as the race goes on. We could see a dive bomb move here before the race is over. Saba now broken away from Rivera by nearly a second from what the gap previously was, around the 0.8, 0.7 mark. Now the gap 1.9, almost 2 seconds. Saba with over 5 minutes left, just over 5 minutes left of this race, just needs to hold on to this lead a little bit longer, just maybe 3 more laps, and he will have this position covered. Harrell with Elizondo still trying to get this position done. Car number 91. Who is in the 91? That is Alarcon. Alarcon around at at turns 12 and 13. With some damage on that car still in his debut race in this series. Saba now broken away from Rivera much more than he was before. Car number 99 off track there nearly, as he is now looking to be under attack from Darnell very shortly. Mott and Kelta still for another lap. These drivers, it seems like they have been beside each other the entire race. The sister cars of the Aston Martins, as Darnell looking to move past Wagner, as I believe we had somebody go wide. This is 4 cars in very close proximity. Kelta was looking for the move on Mott. Kelta backed out of it slightly as to not make contact, and Kelta once again just driving conservatively, trying to not ruin his race as he's trying to make up this position. As Mott now on the front foot looking for a move on Darnell. Darnell once again just using that GTR to its advantage, just trying to make that thing as wide as possible and hold on to this position. He is going to have to defend like a lion if he wants to hold on to this final spot on the podium with a not hurt car, but just very, very, very old tires. Tires much older than anyone else on the grid. Car number 59 of Jennings around on the exit of 10. Slotting back behind the field as he allows the field to move through. Saba with Rivera still behind. Busch now making it past the lap car of Mikey, the Team Lime driver. Harrell in P2, riding nicely, clean air in front of him. Elizondo trying to close this gap down to Harrell. I don't think he's going to have enough time unless Harrell either comes across some traffic or makes a mistake. Wagner off track on the exit of 15. That will drop him down. He was off the podium positions. Darnell going extremely defensive to the inside, forcing Mott and Kelta both to go to the outside. Now Mott and Kelta running nearly side by side as Kelta once again just slotting behind Mott, not able to get that move done. I'm sure Kelta would like to be looking at the back of a GTR rather than the back of an Aston Martin. But Kelta will have to wait once again, just being extremely patient and extremely conservative to not make a stupid mistake and not cause some unneeded contact between him and Mott. Kelta looked like he was nearly going to look for it down into turn 8, just still slotting behind. Wagner, extremely unfortunate, just running a little bit wide, maybe just getting a little off the pace, losing focus, but now dropping down the order just slightly. Davis in the McLaren, down in, I believe, P6. Then DeHaro in P5 in GT2. Merkel and Tremblay, as that group of cars with Hansen, the lap traffic, nearly making contact with Darnell. Hansen just getting a little unclean out of turn 13. Mott still with Kelta just behind. It is not the last lap yet, but it will be white flag next time by, as the leaders of Saba and Rivera. Rivera just behind Saba, but ditto in the GT3 Aston Martin, hindering Rivera as he's trying to go by. He had to go side by side out of 13, which is definitely not what Rivera wanted one bit. He was much closer to Saba than he had ever been, and once again just being forced to go around the outside as we are going to be on the final lap this time. 50 seconds left on the race, as Busch still your GT2 leader with Harrell in P2, Elizondo in P3. Wagner no longer an issue. I believe your GT2 podium is locked down. Darnell still ahead of Mott. This will be the battle to watch. I will keep an eye on the gap between Rivera and Saba, but unless Rivera can pull a lot of pace or Saba makes a mistake, I don't believe that he will be able to get that move done. Darnell trying to defend against Mott. Mott trying to defend against Kelta. Kelta has been following behind these two cars for very, very long. He's been following behind Mott for nearly the entire race. As Kelta, I can only imagine, trying to get past the Aston Martin of Mott, trying to move past a sister car. As Darnell, with very, very old tires, just needs to make it one more lap to the end of the race. Your leading GT3s of Saba and Rivera. Rivera dropping off very much, and there's not going to be any traffic between here and the finish line for Saba to come across. Saba just needs to keep it clean, and he will have the win here. Hopping back on with Darnell. Kelta not close enough for a move down into turn 1. Darnell not close enough to be under attack from Mott, as Darnell is trying to go side by side with Drain. Drain, the GT2 that had some unfortunate contact earlier on in the race. Drain just kind of being a little bit of a roadblock. I believe Darnell is probably saying, hey, you need to get on out of the way, as he does with the flashing lights there. Darnell with Mott and Kelta, the battling Aston Martins, just behind. Kelta, it's got to be a move if he wants to get this position on this lap. Saba and Rivera have finished the race. Busch will be coming across the line shortly. Saba and Rivera finishing in their respective positions in terms of qualifying. Saba P1, Rivera P2. Busch will take home the GT2 win here, and then Harrell will be coming home very shortly with the GT2, or on the GT2 podium. Darnell still ahead of Mott and Kelta, but Kelta has got the move done. Kelta has finally done it on the final lap down into turn 13, 12 and 13, with a little bit of the help from lap traffic, has got the move done on Mott. Mott can try and take it back one more time, but I don't think he's going to be close enough, as Kelta has finally got this position done. Darnell will hold on to his podium, but in the drag race to the line, as Mott has a little bit of slipstream, and Kelta has hold on to it, but 0.03 of a second. Photo finish between Kelta and Mott. Extremely close race. That was the battle of the entire race. They went the entire race battling, and they have finished 0.03 of a second from each other. Kelta pulled to the inside of Wagner, Drain, but Drain pulled Mott along with the slipstream. As we have some donuts here. Not quite sure who they're from yet, as I will try my best to figure that out. It could be car number 7. Oh, it is Darnell. Darnell, I can believe, is extremely happy as his early strategy call played out.
Green light, show them what you got.
I have missed reading the timetables, but an extremely good race there in the Sunday series. Always happy to commentate for TRC. And once again, thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for those viewers on the YouTube stream. Always very fun to commentate for TRC. Definitely with big grids like this that are showing competitive battles all the way through the field. Congratulations to the winners. Congratulations to the podium. I will see you guys on Wednesday as we get started with the KTM Cannonball Series preseason. On Wednesday showed us that series is going to be extremely competitive and show some great battling. We will see what it'll bring us on Wednesday as we will get started series. Glen. We're headed to the Glen, baby. And we will be racing Wednesday night. Make sure you tune in for that race.